The city admired him. People pointed to his life as proof that hard work paid off. He owned the apartment he had dreamed about since university. He drove the car that had once existed only as a picture on his bedroom wall. His office overlooked the skyline. His passport carried stamps from places most people only saw online. When people asked how he was doing, he smiled. "I can't complain." And for a long time, he truly believed it. Everything he had once written on his list of goals had slowly become reality. Promotion, completed. Financial security, completed. Recognition, completed. Freedom, completed. Every achievement felt incredible for a while. Then something strange happened. Each victory quietly became ordinary. The new apartment became just another place to sleep. The expensive watch stopped feeling special. The luxury car became another way to reach work through morning traffic. Even success began feeling routine. One Friday evening, after receiving yet another industry award, he attended a celebration organized in his honor. Colleagues applauded. Friends congratulated him. Photographers captured smiling faces. Someone raised a glass. To the man who has everything. Everyone laughed. Everyone agreed. He smiled politely. Yet somewhere beneath that smile, a question appeared. If I have everything, asterisk, why do I feel like something is missing? Asterisk, he dismissed the thought. Perhaps he simply needed another challenge. So he set another goal, another investment, another milestone, another destination. Months passed. He reached those goals too. The feeling returned. Brief excitement. Then silence. It became a pattern. Every dream fulfilled created another empty space. One quiet Sunday morning, unable to ignore the feeling any longer, he left his apartment before sunrise. The streets were almost empty. Without thinking, he wandered through a district he had not visited in years. Eventually, he found himself standing before a small public garden tucked between old stone buildings. It looked unchanged. Children played beneath ancient trees. An elderly couple shared coffee on a wooden bench. A gardener patiently watered flowers that no one seemed to notice. Life moved slowly there. No one appeared to be chasing anything. He sat down on a bench near a small fountain. For several minutes, he simply watched the water. No phone, no meetings, no schedule, just silence. "You look like a man who has won every race." The voice came from beside him. An elderly man sat calmly with his hands resting on a walking cane. The younger man smiled. "I've been fortunate." The old man nodded. "And yet, you don't look victorious." The words caught him off guard. He laughed softly. "I've achieved everything I wanted." The old man studied him carefully. "Have you?" The younger man frowned. "My career, my finances, my goals. I work for all of them." The old man looked toward the fountain. "When you were climbing, what kept you moving?" "The next goal." "And now?" The younger man opened his mouth. Nothing came. For the first time, he realized he had spent years learning how to climb. He had never learned how to stand still. The old man continued watching the water. "Tell me, when was the last time you did something that no one would applaud?" Silence. The younger man searched his memory. Every recent achievement had been measurable, visible, recognized, promoted, shared, celebrated. The old man smiled gently. "Interesting. What is? You have collected everything the world told you to want." He paused. "But I wonder, did anyone ever ask what your soul wanted?" The question landed with unexpected force, because he honestly didn't know. His dreams had always been clear, but were they truly his? Or had they simply been borrowed from everyone around him? The old man slowly stood. He looked toward the quiet garden where the elderly gardener continued watering flowers no one seemed to admire. Then he extended his hand. "My name," he said calmly, "is Friedrich Nietzsche." The fountain continued flowing. The city continued chasing success. But for the first time, a man who possessed everything began wondering whether he had forgotten to ask the only question that truly mattered. The morning sunlight slowly spread across the garden. Children laughed in the distance. The old gardener continued trimming roses with the same quiet patience. The young man looked at Nietzsche. I don't understand. You say I have everything, yet you feel sorry for me. Nietzsche nodded. I do. Why? The philosopher looked toward the fountain. Because you have reached every destination, without asking whether they deserve to be your destination. Silence settled between them. The young man frowned. But these were my dreams. Were they? Nietzsche asked calmly. Or were they simply the dreams most admired by the people around you? The question lingered. The young man began thinking about each milestone he had celebrated: the prestigious university, the high-paying career, the luxury apartment, the expensive watch, the executive title. Every achievement had been applauded. Every success had made sense to everyone around him. His parents were proud. His friends were impressed. His colleagues were envious. But suddenly, he couldn't remember when he had first decided he wanted any of them. Had he ever decided, or had he simply followed a map that everyone else was already using? Nietzsche slowly stood and began walking to the garden. The young man followed. They stopped beside an old oak tree, whose branches stretched high above the paths. Beneath it stood the elderly gardener. He was carefully removing dead branches from a rose bush, not because anyone was watching, not because anyone would praise him, simply because the roses needed it. Nietzsche watched him quietly. Do you think he is successful? The young man hesitated. I don't know. He isn't famous. He isn't wealthy. He doesn't seem important. Nietzsche smiled. And yet, look at his face. The young man looked more carefully. The gardener wasn't smiling broadly. He wasn't celebrating. But there was something unmistakable about him. He moved without hurry, without anxiety, without needing anyone to notice him. Every movement carried quiet attention, almost gratitude. The philosopher spoke softly. Many people confuse excitement with fulfillment. Excitement always asks, what's next? Fulfillment quietly asks, what deserves my care today? The words echoed through the garden. The young man realized his entire life had been built around the next achievement, the next promotion, the next investment, the next destination, the next version of success. Every mountain he climbed immediately revealed another. He had mistaken endless motion for meaningful progress. Nietzsche picked up a smooth stone from the edge of the fountain. He tossed it gently into the water. Ripples spread outward in perfect circles. When you throw a stone, the ripples continue long after your hand has let go. The young man watched them expand across the surface. So, does a meaningful life? It is measured less by what you collect than by what continues because you existed. Silence. The sentence settled deeply. The young man suddenly struggled to answer a question he had never asked himself. If everything he owned disappeared tomorrow, what would remain that carried his name? Not the apartment, not the car, not the awards. Something else. Something far more difficult to build. A life that had changed other lives. Nietzsche continued walking. The modern world teaches people to ask, what can I achieve? He paused. I would rather ask, what can only you contribute? For the first time in years, the young man felt something he hadn't experienced while receiving promotions, awards, or applause. Not excitement, not pride, curiosity. Perhaps he had mistaken admiration for a purpose. Perhaps the emptiness he felt wasn't a sign that he needed another success. Perhaps it was the quiet realization that he had climbed every mountain others had pointed toward, without ever searching for one that truly belonged to him. The following week, the award still sat on the shelf. The apartment was still beautiful. The city skyline still stretched beyond his office window. Nothing had disappeared, yet everything looked different. For years, he had entered his office asking one question: what do I need to achieve next? Now another question quietly replaced it. If I stopped achieving tomorrow, would I still know who I am? The thought stayed with him all day. For the first time in years, he left work before sunset, not because he had finished everything, but because he realized there would always be more emails, more meetings, more goals, more numbers to chase. The race had no finish line, only new checkpoints. That evening, Instead of attending another networking event, he returned to the small public garden. The old gardener was still there, carefully watering flowers as the sun disappeared behind the trees. The same flowers, the same quiet attention. No audience, no applause, no camera. Yet there was a peace in the old man's movements that no award ceremony had ever given him. Nietzsche stood beside the fountain, as if he had never left. The young man smiled. I think I understand now. Nietzsche looked toward him. Tell me? I spent my whole life collecting proof that I mattered. He paused. But I never asked what actually made life meaningful. The philosopher nodded gently. That is the difference between success and significance. The words settled into the evening air. The young man looked around the garden. Children were laughing. The gardener quietly continued his work. An elderly couple shared tea beneath an old oak tree. None of them appeared to be chasing greatness. Yet something about them felt complete. He suddenly remembered a sentence he had heard years earlier. Success is having more. Now it felt unfinished. Nietzsche quietly added the part no one had taught him. Significance is becoming more. Silence followed. The fountain continued flowing. The city lights slowly awakened in the distance. The philosopher walked toward the garden gate. Just before leaving, he stopped one final time. Without turning around, he spoke. The world will happily give you endless ladders to climb. He paused. Very few people ever stop to ask whether the ladder is leaning against the right wall. The young man closed his eyes. He thought about every promotion, every award, every sleepless night spent proving himself. None of those moments had been meaningless. They had taught him discipline, patience, persistence, but they had never been the destination, only preparation. For the first time, he no longer felt the pressure to become more impressive. He felt the desire to become more intentional, not to chase applause, but to create something that would still matter after the applause had faded. He looked once more at the gardener. The roses would bloom whether anyone thanked him or not. Perhaps that was a lesson. The most meaningful work is often invisible. As Nietzsche disappeared into the evening, one final thought remained. The tragedy of life is not that some people never achieve their dreams. It is that many achieve every dream they were taught to want, only to discover they never pause to ask whether those dreams truly belong to them. And perhaps the richest life is not the one that owns the most, nor the one that receives the loudest applause, but the one that can look back after all the climbing is over and quietly say, I did not merely become successful. I became the person I was meant to become.